today, Muskan Naran. We have with us on our show today Advocate Mayuri Raghuvanshi ma'am. So Mayuri ma'am is an AOR in the Supreme Court of India and she has been in this field for roughly 14 years. So ma'am has been here quite a while, but she calls herself still a student of law. So really glad to have you on the show, ma'am. I'm looking forward to have a session with you where you enjoy and the viewers enjoy as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Law Talkie, and thank you, Muskan. It's a pleasure to be on your show. And while I'm also a student of law, so we have something in common. But I wish I was this enthusiastic and this innovative like you all people are today when I was your age.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This means a lot coming from you. So, ma'am, we had a really good conversation before the session, and I believe that this session is going to be like really smooth to go through. So, ma'am, let's get to know that where did you come from and how was your journey when studying law?
Okay, so where do I come from? Well, I'm still trying to find out where I come from and where I will go. But on a, from the way I look at it, I was born to a man who was very passionate about law. And while I do have, some people from in my ancestry that I can say were lawyers, but I did not really inherit any practice. So this, for all practical purposes, I am a first generation lawyer in the sense that I did not inherit a practice. But having said that, I do have a legal background. And that had been an influence in my becoming a lawyer. So my father is a retired district judge. And my earliest memories of my father is when people say I was less than 2. That's what my parents have informed me. I was less than 2. But my earliest memories of my father is dictating a judgment to his stenographer who would come home early in the morning. And so much so that my father would, while dictating the order, would use terms like plaintiff, defendant. And I would call his stenographer plaintiff uncle. Then I would go every day in the morning when he would come. I would go and tell my father that plaintiff uncle has come. So
Right.
I do not remember cannot recall how plaintiff uncle looked like, but I can definitely remember. I have a very clear memory of my father sitting on that table and dictating the order and reading a file. I do remember, those rusted, torn files, the bulk that used to be on his table. So that's my first introduction, to the world of law through my father. Now, my mother also is a lawyer, and she is a tax. She was practicing in income tax laws.
Okay.
And unfortunately, she did not continue her practice in full bloom after few years after I was born. And but I do still have a very clear memory of my mother going to court. And if there is one thing that I learned from my mother was this, that I will never give up my practice of law ever. So because that, I think, if what made me who I am today are these two people. Like, they are my parents, and they had their own influence on me. So while my father was somebody who was so passionate about the subject, like, I remember when I was in class 5, and my father had this library at home, which also had some biographies, some books. And he the way the government houses are, that there is one room, a small room, which is the office, and then there is a book stacked one over the other there.
Right.
So one of my memories, what really got me interested, after which I really started picking up books from his from his shelf and actually started reading some of them,
Hmm.
When my father and I had this ritual. When he would come back from court at 4:30, so I would finish my homework before that, and I would wait for him to return. And when he would come back from court, that half an hour, 15 minutes was entirely mine. When I would go to him with a cup of, with a glass of water. And I remember at one given point of time, my father's picked up a book, and that book was Closing Chapter by Lord Denon.
Okay.
And I was just so envious. And I wanted to know, who is this man who has taken up my time? The time
Okay.
that belongs to me. Who is this man? Because I went to my father and I told him, Papa, I've scored this much. And I'm sure my father will not remember this now, because he'll dismiss it as something very pity, but it was not pity for me. And now that I am also a parent myself, I try to remember that things, that we as parents sometimes think it's okay. It may mean a lot to the child. I went to
Right.
my father. I told him that I've scored highest in some test in the class. And he said, very good. And he got back to the book. And
Oh.
that got me interested in knowing that what is this my father reading? What is this that he is so, and it was at that given point of time, I can, uh, my father was posted in Ghaziabad on during this time. And I can remember very clearly him sitting on the sofa in the drawing room, because perhaps that was the only quiet place in the house with children my age, to really do some have his leisure time. And he's reading, and the serenity on his face, he was so happy that I really wanted to know what is in this book that's making him so happy. What is he reading that is bringing this
Right.
smile on his face? And then I actually started, that was my first uh, you know interest that I can really recall. If there was something prior to this, I really don't have much fond memories of that. But if there was something, that sort of, introduced me that there is a subject like law. There are people who are judges, there are people who are lawyers, and there is something, that can bring you so much pleasure.
Right.
So that was something that I think really got me interested. And after which I really started picking up, you know, not the law books. No, I had neither had, that stamina to read those bulk books. I was
Yeah.
a young child. But then I started, I remember, my father sometimes reading certain things, and then, I reading out certain excerpts to me. So, as a child, this was, I think, at that point of time, what was there in the book didn't really make any sense to me. And I really wasn't influenced at all about, what was being said there. For me,
Right.
what was important was this, that my father was reading it, and I was, uh, I felt like his favorite child. That
Oh.
I could, he's reading something, and I was listening to him. It was my quality time with him. And I
Right.
didn't realize that one book that he read out to me, and which was there in our, uh, in our home, was the biography by Justice H.R. Khanna's biography, Neither Roses Nor Thorns.
Okay.
And I think, now that I think of it, it was the first, you know, any book on the life of any lawyer or a judge that I can recall, my father reading, and I, reading the extracts with him, or for him, some portions for him. And I feel, it was stupid of me. I wish I could, recall that in
Yeah.
detail a better now. But, despite all this, I really never intended at that point of time to study law the way I, now that I meet students, I meet law aspirants, who intend taking up law, and they are so clear in their mind, and they prepare well in advance. They know, what is an entrance exam. Despite the fact that, I had a legal background, despite the fact that, we I was, in that atmosphere where,
Right. And
you
you
know,
were pretty connected to it. You were
yes,
very much exposed to it, I would say.
I don't know about being exposed. So like I never went to any court. Okay,
Mm.
I was at home with my father. I
Right.
actually saw the court for the first time after I became a law student. Once I got
Okay.
enrolled in this, so I never went to a court before that. I can't
Mm.
say I was connected in the way children are now connected, or for that matter, I think my child is more exposed than I was. But
Okay.
even then, I never, it's very strange, but then I never thought of really studying laws for a long time. So
Mm.
like the way it was there in our times, that if you're a good student you would take up science as your
Mm.
subject.
Right, exactly.
Once I cleared my class 10, if you want to hear the subjects that I chose, you will say that, oh, this girl would never end up being in a law college. My
Okay.
subjects were English,
Hmm.
physics, chemistry, maths, and
Okay.
biology. So I
Okay.
was from a pure science group
Mhm.
with maths as well as biology in my
You're
stream.
closer to being a scientist than a lawyer.
Yeah, in fact, I was preparing for medical and engineering because,
Okay, wow.
and that is how, it sometimes, now that I am a little older and I have found I have found my motto in life. I've found, that what I really want to do, and I
Mhm.
am at ease. I enjoy what I do.
Mhm.
Now it makes all the more sense to me. But at that point of time, I was just this young girl who wanted
Mhm.
to give a shape to her life, a direction to her life, and
Right.
she was still, trying to find out her way. And the way it is with parents, that you know I may not have, being, my father never, really walked up to me and said that, no, you must study law, or I really want you to
Mhm.
study law. The funniest
Mhm.
thing was, the first time I realized that my father really wanted me to study law was when I broke that subject with him. When I got a call letter, then
Okay.
when I really said that I really want to do it.
Huh.
But before that, my father really never, had this conversation with me, or my mother for that matter.
Mhm.
And they really never said that, I could really become a lawyer, or I could practice law.
Mhm.
So maybe, they were trying to be parents, who don't want to influence and give that freedom to their children, to grow up and take
Mhm.
their decisions in their own manner. And I completely, admire that quality. But
Mhm.
at that point of time, I was just on my own trying to find out what to do. And the way it happens, oh, you're a good student, so you must have a science. You
Right.
must take up science. And,
Right.
in fact, in my school, we didn't had arts as a subject. It was
Okay.
only my father who then pointed out to me that, look here, I think you're more interested in history. Because while
Hmm.
I was preparing for those entrance exams, whenever I wanted to relax, or whenever I wanted to do something fun, I
Hmm.
was reading storybooks, I was reading novels, I was reading,
Wow.
history textbooks. So
Mhm.
my father actually pointed out to me, I said, look here, I think you're more interested in policy, in law, in English, in other things, then you are in this. You must accept this fact that you enjoy
Mhm.
history better than physics or chemistry or maths.
Right.
But it's very difficult at that, when you are a young student trying to be a good student, it is very difficult to accept. And this is something that I have learned in life, that
Mhm.
sometimes at each stage you will have to sit back, introspect, and see whether, uh, what I believe, what I think is really the truth. I mean, that
Right.
constant introspection is necessary. At least in my case it is, because I have
So
many a times found I'm wrong.
so
Yeah.
you've always been a great student throughout your
I can't
law,
say
even and
I was a
even in
sincere
school.
one. I was a sincere
Mhm.
one, but I can't say, like, for example, I was not the one who would always stand first in the class. Right.
Okay.
Even for my
Mhm.
law college, like, yes, I did clear my LLB with a first class, and first class in Pune University is a good,
Degree, of course.
it's something that I can really be proud of.
Right.
But having said that, I really can't say I was exceptional. I was not exceptional. You know, my assessment was that I was or I am still. I think I'm a very ordinary person. But you know, it's just that when God has been kind, that I have been sometimes bestowed with extraordinary opportunities. So, you know, for example, I could have never found out the direction of my life or my career. I could have, you know, just got, and like it happens with a lot of people, you know, that you end up in a college, in a course that you realize you're not, your heart doesn't lie there. That's not something you can do day in and day out for rest of your life. But
Right.
I was very lucky that there were people who at the right time came in. So, and you know, like for example, when I was preparing for the medical entrance exam, and because I had maths and biology, I sat for both. I was preparing for engineering as well as for medical. Now think of it, this is itself a fact that how disinterested I was, that I was, you know, preparing for both the streams simultaneously.
Right.
But at that point of time, that looked like the only thing. And I thought that it was something that I could have, you know, really done and
Exactly.
achieved.
When you don't have an affiliation to one thing, then you try to like make it, divide your attention to two things
And in
because
fact, you know, the funniest thing is that I did get selected for an engineering course,
wow.
which was really not there in my cards. I was called, you know, to take up a course in architecture, and this was, thankfully, I'm grateful to God. I'll remain grateful all my life for that. That happened. And around that time, I got a call letter from Symbiosis Law College.
Okay.
And you want to believe that was the only law college that I had sat for. That was the only law college I applied to, because
Wow.
my father and I had this, you know, when I first started discussing with him that I wanted to, I think law is also an option for me. So my father, he said that, you know, if you want to become a lawyer, you must first have a good command of a language. So I would suggest you do your graduation and then take up a 3-year law course. Because my father belongs to that old world of, you know, people
Right.
who believe that you can't teach uh, the concept of right to life to a 17-year-old.
Okay.
So he thought that, you know,
He'll be
how,
surprised now what people are doing.
no,
10th
you know,
class
in
se
fact,
they are starting to
I
study
have
law.
an answer for my father 20 years later. Okay, today,
Okay.
this conversation which I had with my father, and 20 years back, that, you know, I mean, I'm talking about 2000 right now. So in
Okay.
2000,
I
when I
was
met,
born in 2000.
and yeah, oh, you were born in 2000. So I had
Right.
this conversation with my father in the year 2000, and I told him, I said, see, I really want to take up a 5-year law course. My idea, I'll be very candid, at that point of time was only to put my life in a direction. Now that I was beginning to accept that I really don't want to become a doctor or an engineer, I thought that this is something that fascinates me, and this is something that I can, you know, make an attempt to learn. And my father, he said that, you know, have a good command of a language, master that, and then, you know, once you are old enough to understand this concept of, you know, what is right to lie, what is fundamental, how will you understand jurisprudence in first year, even you're 17
Right.
or 18 or 19, what jurisprudence will not make any sense to you. So a good lawyer needs good experience, you know, he needs to feel those emotions. I told my father at that point of time, I said, just, you know, just allow me to write this paper. And, you know, when we were 20 years back, there were just there were very limited options. There weren't many law colleges then who were offering 5-year law course. So one, of course, was in Bangalore, which was very reputed. And then, of course, Symbiosis was there, because I remember there was in a magazine, there was a list of the top law colleges. And I actually
Okay.
picked up which one of them were 5-year law course. And I had to look up for something, you know, which would have an entrance exam. So I could, you know, actually go to my father and say, let me clear this entrance and let me, you know, go ahead. If I clear, let me, you know, get an admission there. So
Okay.
uh, my father got me by the time my father and I, we could have this consensus on that, yes, I can, take up try for a 5-year law course. I missed the deadline for Bangalore. I
Okay.
could not really fill the form.
Mhm.
And I then later on, one of my relatives, my brother-in-law, he
Mhm.
was in Pune at that point of time. He went and got the form and posted it, to me so that I can fill
Yeah.
it up and sent it back. And that
Mhm.
was the only law college that I applied to. And while
Wow.
I was writing the paper, you know,
Mhm.
I had a feeling as if, I knew most of the questions, despite the fact
Wow.
that I had not prepared, so extensively for,
Mhm.
I was preparing for engineering and medical, and I was not really preparing for a law entrance exam in the way I see now. Students
Mhm.
preparing, they come so prepared. They
Exactly.
sometimes, take coachings. They are well read. I had done none of that. But while I
Okay.
was writing that paper, I felt I really enjoyed writing that paper, to be very, honest, because I
Wow.
knew half of the things. The analytical reasoning, I was anyway preparing for an engineering for IIT. So that
Mhm.
all those questions were like really baby things for me. I could
Right.
easily finish that up.
Right.
The questions that
Mhm.
came from general knowledge, that was where I realized that maybe, I was just befooling myself. I really, really was, my interest really lies there because I knew, like, for example, there was this question that what does parliament consist of? I remember
Mhm.
once, when I was in school, I said, went to my father and I said, parliament consists of Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. And my father gave me a pat.
Mhm.
What about the president? And that was
Right.
written there. And I could remember that something which
Mhm.
happened. Then there were questions, relating to Constitution Review Committee. And I
Mhm.
knew those answers, I even didn't have to look at the other options. I knew what the answers were. So
Mhm.
that was one moment when I thought that I really, really, maybe this is where my my interest lie. And if I had any doubt, then I was lucky enough to have a mentor in form of a professor in a law college
Mhm.
walk in my, who had come, who happened to be a family friend, had
Okay.
come. And I told him that I have received these two offer letters. One is from an engineering college, the other one is from Symbiosis Law College.
Mhm.
He said to me without a blink, he said, I think, you should not become just an engineer, you should become a social engineer.
Wow. Beautiful.
And he actually, when I was, if I had any doubt, he
Mhm.
next day went back and, brought some cyclostyle papers. He said, read it. If you enjoy reading this, then it means you are meant to read this for all your life. And
Wow.
that was, his, I really, I didn't understand much, but
Mhm.
I did understand, that this is something that I would like to know. And
Mhm.
I told him, I said, I am very confused because I've never thought of being a lawyer. I
Mhm.
don't know what studying law means, and I don't know what lies ahead of me. So, because now that I see young children, when even in law colleges, law students, or even law aspirants, they're very clear that if they have this degree, where this degree will take them, the career path,
Right.
whether they would go in a corporate, they would end up becoming corporate lawyers. They'll take up, teaching as their further career, or they'll become
They
lawyers.
have even created a new field for themselves, ma'am. This is called legal entrepreneurship. So basically,
Right.
they are trying to become entrepreneurs in the field of law. So
Yeah.
this is
So
really like something different that I
I
recently
had
interviewed
no
somebody.
idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea that how you earn a bread and butter with a degree in law. I had absolutely no idea about that. And I was really confused. And that's when he introduced me to the first biography of a lawyer. So it was My Life by MC Seetal Bhatt. And he said, just read it. And if you think, that he is in any way, you are as confused. If you're confused about studying law or not studying law, you're not the first one. There have been others
Right.
also as well.
Right.
And I was hooked to the book. And I'll be very candid. At that time, when you are still, about to enter a law college, I did find the initial chapters very interesting. But the rest of the portions that I enjoy now in that book, which pertains to his life as a lawyer, the cases that he discussed, I found it very heavy. And I had actually kept the book and I reread, his early life and his time as a law student many times during my law college, but I never finished the book. I finished the book much later.
Okay.
So, it's just that, that one after the other, I was very lucky enough to have people. My first class in law college in Symbiosis, and I remember the second lecture was by one of our professors, was Professor Aruna Sampath, who was teaching us legal history. And 5 minutes, I still remember that class was about the duties of a king. She was explaining us the concept of state and then the duties of king. And she very beautifully, she had this art of, installing, setting that process of the thought process in motion, where you could relate things in history to the present context and understand it as a lawyer. So she said that, do you think that these duties of king are similar to the duties of an advocate, which are now prescribed under the Bar Councils Act? And then she started picking up one thing after the other and trying to make that connect.
Wow.
And 5 minutes into that class, I knew that I was born to study this.
Right.
I knew that I would end my whole life reading this, studying this. This is what I have to master in life. I remember, coming out of that class when we had the lunch break, the first thing to do was go to the PCO, call up my father and said, now I know what I have to do in life.
Wow, beautiful.
So it was that, so maybe, that's where I think my interest in the profession is more, it didn't happen, that I wanted to become a lawyer, so I chose to study law. It happened the other way around for me. I first liked law as a subject, and then it opened up that avenue for me, that whether, I would really practice it as a lawyer, or I would teach as a professor, or I would end up, doing something else, maybe, just, doing, I wasn't very clear of the ultimate outcome where this journey would take me. But what I liked was the fact I still, and that is something, that's why I say that I'm still a student of law, because the best moment for me in the day is the time when I'm reading my file.
Right.
When I am in the court, that 5 minutes of that interaction with the judge, whether I lose the case or I win the case, that is a pleasure in itself. That gives me that high that I'm looking for in life. So just it's very satisfying sometimes. There is this concept called Swanta Sukhai. So when you study, when you read for your own self. It gives you, a pleasure that is just your own. And so if you're really interested in the subject, if there is something you have found that you can read, and you can, read for your whole life and feel happy about it, now I know why my father was so happy reading that book, sitting in that one corner. And I also have found an answer, to my father's question 20 years later. Yes, maybe, you can't, a 17-year-old can't understand fundamental rights, can't understand jurisprudence very well. Maybe it takes a lifetime to understand that concept. But what can, in a 5-year law course, happen is this, that we can introduce them to those concepts, to tell them that this is something they have to read all their life. Because what you are taught in a law college is just, you are being introduced. You are told, that Mr. So-and-so exists. So know about him, recall it, if, he should not remain a stranger for you. So that, if you are, that ice can be broken at the age of 17. Maybe it will take a lifetime to understand what is right to life. Maybe, we will, I still wonder if I now know, after 14 years in Supreme Court, that do I really understand what is right to life? No. And as an institution also, every day you see that there is a new dimension, no new facet that we discover to these concepts. So we all are learning. Even the institution as a whole is learning.
Yeah, exactly.
So
So, ma'am, I
yes,
was wondering that, so you've talked about how, you enjoy law a lot.
yes.
So, being in this field, what do you enjoy about it?
See, I first and the foremost thing that I like about the fact is, what is the purpose of education? You know, I'm not, if I would have been an engineer, I would have, let's say, taken admission in that course and not in this one. I would have still been an educated citizen of this country.
Right,
But and what is ultimately the purpose of an education? The ultimate purpose of an education is to make you equipped to live in a society, to give you a perspective.
right,
When you study law, that metamorphosis happens really fast because you are dealing with perspectives all the time. What is a judgment after all? A judgment is a learned view, right? An article is a learned view. What you are asking me and what I am giving you is my view, right? So at the end of the day, we all are getting this perspective from from what we read, what we see. So that metamorphosis, that perspective to live life, to look at life, to look at problems, I think my study of law has made me a better human being.
right.
It has given me a perspective to deal with things. And when somebody now tells me that there is a problem, I law has equipped me to find solution answers to that problem, to find solutions to the problem. If maybe there are an educated person is somebody who can identify a problem, right? Who can really see from a fact that this is a problem, this is a problematic situation, this is a problem. But a lawyer is trained to find an answer to that problem. So as a lawyer, you look at problems with an intention to find an answer. And imagine, if you have this skill, how much it will benefit you in your life as a whole.
Right, exactly.
It does
So
give you.
everything actually revolves around law only, because any place that you
Yes.
go, even the medical field, even in the times of corona or everything, people do regard medical as the highest field. I believe in any case law exists. So it actually is a very significant field. Like you can place it anywhere in life.
You're
So,
right.
ma'am, this is really interesting that what you talked about. So, I was thinking that this is going to be a very common question which appears,
Yeah.
and I am really curious as a female myself that what are the challenges that a woman faces when she comes into the law field, or not even the challenges. How do women practice as to their counterparts, like to the male lawyers?
To be very fair, honest, the moment how I have coped up with it, the moment I wear my band and my gown, I forget my gender. I don't think my reactions will be any different from a man, or whether I would have reacted differently had I been a man. So with the band and the coat and the gown, my reactions are same, and they would not have changed. If I feel angry about something, I feel angry about it as a lawyer. If I want to say something as a lawyer, and the gender prejudices are so ingrained in our society that sometimes we don't even realize that we are biased. So
Right.
there has to be an effort that needs to be made at our end, first and foremost, as individuals. If you will start feeling as a woman that, I am at a disadvantageous position, because I am a woman, then it will become very difficult for you to actually to identify your real problems and to shape up your career or to develop a skill. Because every time you will face a problem, or you will feel that, there is a shortcoming in you, you will try to hide and camouflage it behind your gender.
Right.
Secondly, sometimes if you look very closely, all those things that you identify as a disadvantage, they can be an opportunity in disguise. Like, I'll give you an example.
Right.
When I was pregnant, and if and believe me, if I would have not been pregnant, I would have not realized that how it reduces, your movement. But that period, while I was working and I still had a lot of work, and I was in that phase of my career where my work was just, the plane was about to take off, and
Right.
I was all of a sudden my mobility was restricted
Hmm.
to some extent.
Hmm.
But if that would have not happened, I would have never cleared the advocate on record exam. I
Okay.
wrote my advocate on record exam when I was 9 months pregnant, and my son was born exactly 5 days after I wrote my last paper. And
Wow.
imagine if
Hmm.
I would have, believe me, that was the easiest thing I could have done during that period.
Hmm.
Because now that the child is out, I don't think I would have ever cleared that paper with a 1 year child, or with a toddler in the tow. I would have never had that kind of a concentration. But
Hmm. Hmm.
it just, that disadvantage that I was pregnant, it became my biggest advantage at that point of time, because
Hmm.
I because I was pregnant, I could take a little bit of relaxation from that hectic work schedule, and I could write that exam and clear it. That's the most important thing. I wonder if I could have cleared it later on. you know
Hmm.
and like now, this pandemic has brought the world to a standstill. Okay,
Hmm.
but what it has done to me is this: for the first time I went on the virtual world. So
Right.
all these years I don't have a Twitter account, I didn't had a Facebook account, I don't have, I was never
Yeah,
there
I
in
couldn't
the
find you
virtual world.
anywhere except LinkedIn.
Yes. So for the first time, I actually came on the LinkedIn, and for the first time, I
Hmm.
actually learned to be friendly with technology, because
Right.
I have been trained by lawyers who were exceptionally good, and they never
Hmm.
depended on technology. So my first boss, for
Right.
example, didn't even had a computer on his table and had everything on his fingertips.
Wow.
My Who was an advocate on record in
Hmm.
Supreme Court, and my guru, my mentor, who taught me everything that I know today as an advocate on record.
Ma'am,
And
who would that be?
Mr. S.N. Bhatt, he is
Okay.
one of the most learned and most diligent people that I have ever come across. And
Hmm.
he would write things in longhand. He never even owned a laptop. The
Wow.
Even his phone was archaic, and still he had everything here. And when you are trained by a man like that, and even my second boss, my Mr. Gopal Subramaniam, he
Hmm.
was also someone that who was very quick, to look at the file. I actually learned that how one can read a file so quickly and remember things verbatim. So
Right.
he was a living computer right in front of my eyes. So
Right.
when you're trained by people like this, you
Hmm.
are forced to think that you should not depend on technology so much. You should know how to
Hmm.
pull out a judgment from the book. And
Hmm.
my failure to do so, I always look down upon that as a drawback, and I learned that with time. So when you are like that, you definitely technology becomes a contraband item in your professional life. But this pandemic changed it all.
So, how
I,
was your experience with the virtual course?
it's you know it has its advantages,
Hmm.
it has its disadvantages also. But I can't really, it'll be little early to comment on this for only one reason.
Hmm.
See, on a given day in Supreme Court before the pandemic, there we had about 10, 11 courts sitting on one particular day,
Right.
and each court had at least 70 matters in the list.
Hmm.
Today the cost list is much smaller,
Right. Exactly.
and the number of benches that sit at one go, they
Hmm.
are also much lesser than what were in the pre-pandemic era.
Hmm.
So we don't the volume of work has come down, our
Okay.
volume of work has come down, the court's
Hmm.
volume of work has come down. But but having said that, there is one thing that this pandemic has really brought to the to our focus, is this: that despite any situation, we can still work, we can work out things. And our staff, for example, the Supreme Court registry, the way, now they are functioning, it is really commendable. It's a, I mean, hats off to them. The way, to set up, it looks like it's you and as lawyers, as judges, we know that we are doing less number of matters than we were doing in March or in February. But in order, to have that smooth hearing, there is an entire team for us,
Right.
our staff, who make sure that because we don't have the luxury of handing over the judgments across the bench
Yeah.
to the bench just by, taking the
Right.
case number so and so, this so and so. We don't have that. So the registry is, they came up with this thing that we can file, we can upload judgments, we can circulate it, we can email it, and they are responding. And imagine,
Even WhatsApp groups are there to communicate. Who imagined that communication will happen on WhatsApp?
On that. And like for example, now that we file the matter, the person from the registry calls me and says that, this is this defect, could you clarify this?
Right.
So imagine, this was something which was done by the clerks. They were sitting at the corner, and kind of effort it must be for them, to be on the phone all the time. I'm not the only lawyer they're talking to.
But ma'am, do you think that virtual courts can replace the real courts? Also, I was thinking one thing, that what used to be the challenge before was that you had to travel from your house to maybe court and then come back. So it used to take a lot of time traveling there, and also dressing up for that and everything. Like there used to be a lot of things that used to happen in court which were time wasters. But now that virtual courts are there, shouldn't there be more hearings now as compared to?
No, my experience has been this, that it takes a lot of time to set up the whole system. The reason is this, that, for example, on a given day that we have a court matter listed, I will have to log in. There will be a control room check. Okay, then they have limited bandwidth. So imagine a big matter where, and it happens most of the time when we have when we have a big matter listed where there are many lawyers. Like sometimes there will be, if you're led by a senior, there would be an AOR, there would be a senior. The client would also, like, sometimes you are also assisted by a junior whose help you want to, take in the matter. So the number of lawyers appearing in a matter are much, but the bandwidth is limited.
Okay, yeah.
And at one go, they have, I believe, like, for example, in the present system, the video feed can be of 8 to 10 people or so.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, imagine doing it like this. For example, you're doing the Zoom thing and you have about 50 people doing a Zoom meeting at one go. You will not be able to concentrate on who the lawyers are. So there is a possibility that there is a feeling that, I could have said it effectively in a physical hearing. But in a physical hearing, the judges also, they're not depending on that who is on the screen. They can, look at who the person is, and, suppose, you want to say something at some point of time, but the system, you don't get unmuted there. So, it's a lot of, the fact that everything is going so smoothly, and we are talking about, we are working and we are talking, whether we can extend it to more matters. Actually, it's in disguise. It's a compliment for the people who are making this thing work. It's for those people in the registry, in our offices, who are, and see, some of us are, some lawyers are people who have never had, been on any, never even had a computer in their office. Computer was only for the typist who would type the annexures, who would prepare the file. They never used computer for their own personal work, for searching a law or for reading a file. They never did any of those things. My boss was one of them. But now he is also appearing via video conferencing. He is also doing matters there. So this entire process is taxing for some. But yes, given that, one advantage is there, that now, the judges look much closer to you on screen than when they are sitting.
I was seeing one. Yeah, I was seeing one NCLAT hearing, and I was seeing that the judges were not even facing the camera; they were like looking at the side, and you can't. So in basic courts, what I used to enjoy was seeing the theatrics. I used to enjoy that, how the judges were sometimes mocking the people who are in front of them or something like that. So it used to be really funny, and it used to be like a lively situation. It seemed like a good working environment. But
No,
right now it seems
judges
very
are friendly
monotonous.
even in video conferencing.
Yeah.
They are friendly. They are receptive, and they will not hesitate, and they will
Right.
not mince word. If they want to say something, they will say it. So
Right.
that way, I'm not missing any of those things. But yes, we do, and most importantly, I what I miss is, when you are in court. Um, there are not many things that would distract you, and
Mhm.
you are focused there. But
Mhm.
sometimes you are forced to do video conferencing or attend a virtual court from a place where you may not have that kind of privacy. So
Right.
sometimes it becomes little I mean it's sometimes distracting for a lawyer, to while you're formulating a proposition, where you're trying to say something, it may become a problem. And
Mhm.
but then these are individual problems in that sense
Right.
of the term, because it may happen from person to person. Maybe I could feel distracted at a given point of time. Maybe you have a
Mhm.
better focus, better concentration than mine, you may not do that.
So,
So
ma'am, I was thinking that you have had a career, I can say, which you think is really short. And as you told me that it's like being a toddler in this field. So 14 years is like you are a toddler in this field.
yes.
So I was thinking that what all do you think that you did right in this field till now? So what were your things that have made you successful till now?
I think a positive attitude is something which is most important, foremost, because
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think what has made me successful, I can't say successful, but what has been rewarding is the fact that my few concepts, I was very clear on few things, and few things
Mm-hmm.
I learned, and thank God I learned them with time. So the first thing is this, that if you intend practicing law as a lawyer, there are many fields available. Now law is, has become that omnipresent God, and it has opened up avenues that were not even imagined few years back. Now,
Mm-hmm.
but I can only talk about the avenue that I am well versed with, that is practicing as an advocate. you
Mm-hmm.
know it is not a 9 to 5 job to begin with. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are looking for a job, if you think you're looking forward, to take up a placement kind of, a kind of a job which would earn you bread and butter, then perhaps you will be disappointed, you'll be disheartened in long run, because this is not a job, and certainly not a 9 to 5, and even not even a 9 to 9 job. Because the nature of profession is such that even if you're a junior or an intern, the
Mm-hmm.
number of hours you will put in are longer than one puts in any other field. Because here there is a court
Right.
work that you do, and then you come back to your office and you prepare, and that's the real ground, the real factory where the whole ammunitions are made, for the war next day. So you have to, you are forced to put in that many number of hours. Secondly, you are dealing all the time with people, who are either in trouble for some reason. So two things will happen. One, they will be agitated, there will be a certain sense of urgency all the time.
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
you can't you will not have the luxury sometime, to respond for things, with ease, or take things, you are, if a man knocks at your door and say, I'm in trouble, you have to help him then and there, you know so
Hmm.
sometime, and you have to take up his problem, and you will have to deal with that problem. So a number of times, imagine, the people who are coming to you are always troubled. So for you to maintain that state of mind where you remain happy, you remain positive, you remain cheerful, it sometimes becomes difficult. So
Hmm.
that is something that I was very clear, I learned it from my seniors, the people who trained me. This was something I learned from them. Both the lawyers who trained me, whether it was Mr. Bhatt or whether it was Mr. Subramaniam, I,
Mm.
I saw that trait in both of them, that they were dedicated to to the study of law, and at the
Mm.
same time they were there. They knew that it was not a 9 to 5 job, and
Mm.
because it's not 9 to 5 job, you can't expect returns or a uniform returns, you know.
Right.
So
Right.
which means that if you
Mm.
are expecting that a certain fixed amount at the end of the month, then sorry, that's not the
Not
nature of the
happening.
work. It's not that's not the way it works.
Mm.
Also, your assessment of success,
Mm.
it is erroneous, it's completely fallacious to assess a lawyer's success in terms of the money he has earned or he or she has earned. The
Mm.
reason for this is, that sometimes there will be high profile matters. There will be work that you would have done, a body of work, which you would have done pro bono.
Mm.
Would that lawyer who has done that work pro bono is not a good lawyer? No, that person is also a good lawyer. What happens naturally is this, that when you are good, then after a time you are sought. And when you are sought at the price you ask. Okay. So that also happens, but it may not happen to everyone. There will be people who are not willing to, put a price tag on their work. So
Mm.
you could be
Right.
one of them. And
Mm.
this is one problem, that now that I also have this opportunity of, interacting with law students in the law college. I see that this is one problem, that, when you have spent 5 years in a law college, you naturally end up expecting that what would be my package? What will I be
Mm.
placed? So
Right.
yes, you can get a placement, you can get a package, but the problem is that the nature of job here is this, that even if you are paid, you will that payment is not, it neither reflects your caliber, nor it is something that you can legitimately expect. Because please
Mm.
remember, litigation by and large is an individual driven
Right.
work. When
Right.
you go to a lawyer, you go to that lawyer with a
Right.
faith, with a trust. Okay.
Mm.
So there is, and explain the art of advocacy is something that you learn over a span of time. And that
Mm.
art of advocacy is how well you can put a point, a proposition before a court, how effective you are. And
Mm.
these qualities are individual driven, and
Mm.
have to be developed over a span of time. So even
Mm.
if you have the best information in the world, you are well read, you have done things well, but I mean, you have been a topper throughout in your law college, still you have not
Mm.
practiced law. That's why it's called practice of law. It's not
Yeah.
profession of law, it's not occupation of law, it's not job of
Yeah.
law, it's practice of law. So you
Mm.
have to practice it and master it,
Mm.
and it takes a lifetime. Believe me, it takes a lifetime.
Mm.
Today I know what I don't know. So
Mm.
maybe, I'm at a better position than those who don't know what they don't know. But I
Mm.
believe me, what I don't know is so much more than what I know. So,
Right.
it is because it's an individual driven. You
Mm.
when in a lawyer's office, if you are, let's say you're working with a senior counsel, you are
Mm.
assisting the senior counsel, but the
Mm.
matter, the work, everything revolves around that one man. It is
Mm.
literally a one man army. And even when in a law firm structure, where there are people, where there is work, the it takes time, for a person to become a lawyer of that caliber, that
Right.
the client or the senior can trust him or entrust the entire
Mm.
matter on that person's shoulder. Because if tomorrow something goes wrong, because there is no guarantee or warranty that you're going to win even the best case, right? You may have the best law, but suppose tomorrow the law changes, there is a
Mm.
possibility you will lose the matter then. So
Right.
you can never guarantee or warranty an outcome of a litigation. So in that
Mm.
case, it is always very difficult for, for a junior to carry the entire shoulder on your own,
Mm.
to carry the
Right.
entire matter on their own shoulder. Now, when
Mm.
that happens, so see, it's such a strange thing that you are independent in your own right the day you get enrolled as an advocate. You are
Mm.
independent. You are, even when you work with a lawyer, you either read in his chamber as a as a student, as a, as a, he's your
Intern.
mentor, or, you are working with that person, but still, it will take time for that lawyer to interest, because even if the lawyer wants to do that, even if I want to do that with my junior, it will take time for the client to trust that junior to really do that work. So it is, and these are the factors which in long run determine that how much you will earn. So it is, when you are looking at a package, when you're looking forward to earn, you should be very clear that if you are picking up a field of law, if you are looking forward to become an arguing counsel, it is your reputation which matters. So,
Right.
to begin with, your reputation in the office before the client. So whether, if your senior, if you're the partner or whosoever is not there in the court, and you are there and you're doing the matter, the client doesn't come back and, give a call that why, the partner was not there, why the junior has been sent, she should have, or he should have, just taken an adjournment while the madam was on the way. If that, if you can overcome that stage, or automatically your earnings will also increase. And once you are, from an office to a state to on a national plane, that's how you grow. And this takes time. It won't happen overnight. It is for this reason that if you intend practicing law, you can't expect a package. So a lot of students, come back and say, we are working. So when we are working, why should not we earn? This is the reason.
So ma'am, what makes a lawyer different from another lawyer?
What makes an individual different from another individual? Because it's just that, see, we all are different individuals, and our as I said, as a lawyer, the court is going to decide a case, and your job is to assist the court in coming to that conclusion. So when you are trying to formulate a proposition, whenever you formulate a proposition, it reflects the way you look at the problem. And that is why sometimes, you will see that, it has happened to me that I had once gone to a senior counsel to brief him for a matter. He, I briefed him, we told him how, what propositions we were laying through, and he developed an argument which was beautiful. And unfortunately, the matter was not listed, and then it got listed on some other date and he was not available. So we were forced to go to another senior counsel. And we again briefed him. This time, same case, same propositions, same case laws. But this man developed the story in a completely different fashion. So that was his perspective. That is his proposition. So every lawyer, therefore, is as different and one individual can be from the other. And this means that my trajectory is my own, and your trajectory will be your own. So, but having said that, there is place for everyone. If there is a place for, an activist here, there is a place for a commercial lawyer as well. There is you just have to identify what you are comfortable doing. What is that you want to do? So if you are comfortable doing something, that is your niche, that is your area. You will, develop your own style in time. You will develop your own way of working with time.
So interning under different people is going to help people, to understand what different styles are then and adopt your own style.
So, I won't say I'm averse to internships. Okay. I am, as a matter of fact, I look at internship as a beautiful opportunity to understand, and the kind of confusion I went through when I was a student, or when I was, a law aspirant, and trying to come to this understanding that what you really want to do in life, because it's very important, ultimately to find out where are you home at your work or not? Are you really happy doing something? Do you get tired by doing what you are trying to do? So, that process, that introspection, that entire process to understand your own self, that does happen through internships. So when you are, for example, when you're interning with somebody, you have to ask yourself, do I want to be like this? Do I really want to, can I work like this? Now, also interning with different people give you that perspective that there are different kind of people in the world. But there are two problems with the internships. The first problem with the internship is this, that unless and until your internship is for a substantial duration, you are not going to learn much. There are two reasons for this. The first reason is this, that most of the time you do your internships, you do it when the courts are closed. So anyway, you don't see the real action.
Right.
That's one problem. The second problem is this, that when you are doing that internship for a shorter duration, see, a lawyer anyway will be busy in his or her own things. Now, either you have to be the one, who is very proactive and, who is willing, to and observant and is learning things. But then the way currently the way the courts function right now, suppose you are doing, you're working on a case and the next hearing is next month when you're not around. So you really don't know what had happened with the work that you had done in the court. So while you're working, you really don't see how that work really takes shape in the court. So that's a big problem with short internships. So if you're doing a short internship, it really doesn't take you anywhere. So you really, if you're looking forward to do an internship, you will have to do it for a longer duration, especially in
So what would you suggest? Like a 1 month internships are a no-go for you. But then what?
I usually see, if you're doing a 1 month internship, is just, come look at us. We'll give you a party when you leave. It would be something like that. But, the other problem with internship is this, that I sometimes feel, this is just my personal view, I may be wrong, but the internships either occupies you so much, or it generally tends, to, in these practical trainings are meant to give you, it's an addition to your training, right? They can't substitute classroom teaching. You really have to attend classes. It starts from the textbook. You will have to cross the bridge when you come to the bridge. So if you, at that point of time, when you are in law school, you have to read. You have to actually read. And not just the textbook, you perhaps will have to read a lot of other things. Read as much as you can. Because tomorrow, the moment you will wear a band and a gown, and as you will, progress in life, time will be very less. You may want to, your reading list will increase. So now that you have time, read and find out, as much as you can. So document as much information as you can right now. This is one problem, that sometimes, we think that if we do an internship, we'll be better trained. Yes, you will be better trained, no doubt about that. But the question is this, that you will not be a better lawyer if you think that you are only there hanging in the court, but you have not read the law. You really will have to sit down and read the law. So one problem that the technology has come is this, that we think we can Google and we can find out everything. But unfortunately, what is the authenticity of the information? You will have to go back, and as a lawyer, when you place a document before the court, you have to be very confident that this document is authentic. It is exactly the same as the original document that would have been in place. So that process, things may become instant. So you need to be trained for that. Internships help, provided you are, looking at internships with an intention to understand what you want to do. And once you have understood what you want to do with your life, then to train yourself in that direction. So if suppose you have not decided whether you want to be a corporate lawyer, you want to be an advocate on record, you want to be an arguing counsel, you pick up your internships, you do various internships. I did that. There were some internships I completely enjoyed, some I completely didn't like. And the ones that I didn't like, I realized that I didn't like this because I really can't do this kind of, I don't enjoy this kind of job. I enjoy something else.
You were not enjoying the people you were working with, or the work that you were doing?
It is always about the work. This is where, you will have to make that assessment. Do not ever mistake work with people. Sometimes it is, it is easier said than done, because, I enjoy my work perhaps so much because I have a wonderful team. I have people, who make things work for me, who smoothens that entire process. So yes, the credit goes to them. If I argue a matter in court, the credit goes to my associate, who helps make sure that the file is in order. The credit goes to my clerk who has got that, file matter listed in the court, who has made sure, that the entire registry work has been taken care of. So it's definitely that you are what your team is. You are definitely, not a standalone individual. You represent the team. Even this conversation that I have with you, maybe I'm just talking as an individual, but the fact is this: it's my entire team, who is responsible, to bring me to this place that I could, have this conversation with you. So definitely people are there, but then that's where, you can change the team. You can pick up at a later stage, that, oh, I don't want to work with this lawyer, I want to work with this. I want to work, these are the people I want in my team, these are the people I don't want in my team. But you will not be able to substantially, change the nature of the work that you do. For example, if you're somebody who hates going to court, then you work with the best mind, but you don't like, you don't like wearing a band in a court, and you don't like argument. You're perhaps somebody who would like to do an academic research and read and maybe teach. So if that is where your interest lies, maybe you'll have to pick up what you are comfortable doing.
Right. Okay. So, ma'am, didn't actually complete that question. So, what do you think that you did right in this whole career that you have?
Okay, what I did
What
right.
makes you? What made you that you are today? In your practice.
What made me who I am today is the people who have trained me and the people I work with. So they are the ones, who have made me who I am today. So my associates, my intern, my boss in the office, all of them are who I am who have made me who I am today. My father, my father-in-law, my the people who have trained me, my two bosses, Mr. Bhatt, Mr. Subramaniam, the professor in Banaras Hindu University, Dr. Pandey, who said that I should be a social engineer and not just an engineer.
Yeah.
These are the people, Professor Aruna Sampath, who made me realize that I was born to learn this thing. This was what I was to learn all my life. And lawyers, most importantly, the advocates I have briefed, the advocates I have worked with, who have actually taught me so much. I have learned so many things from them. So, from the seniors, I have briefed and assisted. Whether it was Mr. Gaurav Banerjee, with whom we did one of my the matters which is closest to my heart, All India Judges Association. Now, I learned from him that you could be so big and so humble and so large-hearted, to take up a matter like that on a pro bono basis and allow, and still, give your best effort, best shot, and, allow not just the lawyer, but the clients, with innumerable queries. So, if when you see a man of that stature working like that, it becomes very difficult for you, you realize how small you are, and you need to, work much, much harder than him. And every senior counsel that I have briefed, some of the experiences have been so good and so enriching that it has really made me who I am today. Like, I remember one senior counsel once saying this to me, that, in a day, I may be born in place A, you may be born in place B, you may be born in a better circumstances, I may be. So we were talking about disadvantages, like your disadvantage, my gender, your gender, all those things. But there is one thing that God has done to, level everything. He has given all of us just 24 hours. Even the Chief Justice of India has only got 24 hours. He won't get a 25th hour in a day. And even a small lawyer like me will only get 24 hours. I'll not get 23. Right? So God has sort of created that balance by giving all of us that 24 hours. And when he said this to me, that, each one of us has only 24 hours. And now what we do with that 24 hours,
Hmm.
is what who we are. So I am what I do with my 24 hours. You are what you do with your 24 hours. So
Right.
this is where, you know, the line of you know, difference that lies between us. So
Hmm.
sometimes, you know, when I, this is something that I say this to my associates also, you know, when they feel depressed, or you know, they feel unsure about, you know, how to go about this, how to do this, I always say this, you know, we are all what we do for the for those 24 hours. Forget about any of the disadvantages.
Right.
And you know, some
Hmm.
seniors have been so nice, so encouraging. Like I remember when I had once gone to brief a senior counsel, a female senior counsel, and she had just been appointed as an ASG. And I said, ma'am, this is an inspiration when we look at women like you, and it is so inspiring. So you know, she was so kind enough. She said, you know, when I was young, you girls are more focused,
Hmm.
you know, so don't worry, you all will make it. So you know, that sense of encouragement is what has made us who we are. And
Hmm.
that is why I say, you know, that in our profession, this brotherhood, this you know, seen this whole tradition of seniors training juniors has really benefited us. And this really makes hell lot of a difference, you know, in shaping up a career. When you listen to an argument in court, you know,
Hmm.
when I was we had filed a matter in Supreme Court where Mr. Datar was then appointed as an amicus. You know,
Okay.
when I heard him in the court arguing that matter,
Hmm.
right next, you know, standing next to me, I it gave a completely different, my matter, same thing that I had also filed a thing, and now he is amicus there. It
Hmm.
gives you a perspective in, you know, oh my god, you know, some, this could be looked at like this. There are so many, you know, under layers to this entire issue, which,
Hmm.
you know, so this comes when you, when the people you work with, they
Hmm.
train you like this. So people who I've worked with, and people I brief and I see in court, they are the ones who have made me who I am.
Right.
And if you ask me what is the right thing I did, I think there are just two right things that I have done. One is this, that I think I've read a lot as a student.
Hmm.
So um, I have read possible everything that could come, one could lay hands on. I have read storybooks, I have read novels, I
Hmm.
have read translations, I have read in all languages that I could read, and I have read in
Wow.
all translations that I could lay my hands on. And
Wow.
not just law, I read everything.
Hmm.
And some, you know, there was a very senior lawyer who once said to me that, you know, whatever you learn in law doesn't go, if you intend being a lawyer, whatever you read or whatever you do never goes waste.
Hmm.
Even if tomorrow you know how to cook or how to drive, it may help you someday in some other some matter,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day there is law everywhere. So you never know what you do, what you read would help. And I think the second thing that I did right was this, that I have long back understood that you nobody succeeds alone in life. We succeed in team.
Right.
So I know that I am, if I have to succeed in life, it's always going to be a team effort. Team
Hmm.
effort of the people who are with me. The clerk is a very important component of the office, and it was, you know, for example, when I was a student, when I was reading in Mr. Bhatt's chamber, it was not just Mr. Bhatt who was my guru. It was his clerk, KPG, who was also my guru, who taught me things, you know, that how, for my advocate on record exam, for example, there was a question that what is the court fee that is fixed on a appeal filed under Consumer Protection Act? And this
Okay.
is something I learned from him.
Okay. Yeah.
He taught me what is the court fee which is fixed. So
Hmm.
you learn things. I think I have understood it long back
Hmm.
that one doesn't, nobody succeed alone in life. We
Hmm.
succeed with a team. If you want to do more work, if you want to do good work, you really need to have good team. That it, and I've been lucky, maybe a little choosy with the people I work with, but then I have some wonderful people in my team who
Hmm.
have been there, especially, for example, now that there was this pandemic, and there was this problem that no one could come to office. The office was also
Hmm.
closed for a while. The metros are down and there's
Yeah.
no public transport. but there were people who stood by me, who's, so when you see that there is a team who is standing by you, you want to work hard and you want to, don't want to let them down. So this is something, which keeps you motivated then. So I think this is one thing that I've done right, that I have a good people I work with. And and not just, for the court work. For example, apart from court, that I teach in Symbiosis Law College. So Dr. Ramantle, who had once been my guru, and now that, I work with him, I see that same thing in him, that he really values, he leads the team. He while I, as a professor who's taking that course, as a teacher who's taking a course, has the independence of, deciding how I want to take the class, how I want to do it. He really, channelizes, guides, and do that leader. So when I come back to my office, I have learned this from him, and I try to inculcate that same thing.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the session. It was really enjoyable, and I think it was so gripping, all the stories that you've told us, and everything was so valuable, each word that you said. I think we need another session in the future, because this was cut halfway due to internet connection problems. So we need maybe another session, and I think you have a lot to share still. So ma'am, thank you so much for coming. If you would like to say anything.
Welcome. You're most welcome. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope we can stay in touch in the future.
Of course, we should. I intend learning a lot of things from you. And I have learned one thing, your sheer enthusiasm, to try something so new at this stage is really inspiring.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It really inspires me a lot. Coming from you, exactly everybody online has been all praises for you. Thank you so much.
Good luck. Good luck to you and to your team.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.